Namaste everyone. Welcome to my channel and the series Random PhD Talks. My name is Spurti, and in today's episode, I have a wonderful guest, Danish, who I have the privilege of knowing for quite a few years now. In a very interesting story, I know Danish personally through the campaign that I was working way back in Hyderabad on Women's Commission. And I came in touch across Danish, who is from Kashmir, and wanted to support the work that was ongoing in Hyderabad, which also shows his passion to, the larger cause. And it's quite surprising that both of us have ended up in Leeds, out of all the places in the world. But Danish has a wonderful career, almost quite similar. We were speaking about how we both share buckets of experience. And for us, PhD is something that we see as a space for us to finally get some more depth, right, in that subject matter. So over to you, Danish, if you could please give us a brief introduction.
Yes. So my name is Danish Zahoor. I am from Srinagar. In J&K, and I did most of my schooling there, and I graduated from the Kashmir University with a BBA degree, Bachelor of Business Administration, and then I went on to do my MBA at Symbiosis Pune. My MBA was in Marketing and Finance, after which I joined Ernst & Young for a while as a consultant. But that was a pretty short stint. I realized very quickly that I don't want to be here, and it was at that point I thought I really wanted to be in academia or writing. I went back to Kashmir and joined the education department, and where I taught for around 5 years. I taught political science, but at the same time I also was working as a teacher educator, where my role revolved around bringing the teachers of the department to par with the National Education Policy 2020, and also trying to help them with technology. I mean, this was a time when technology, this was the COVID time when a lot of teaching was happening online through Zoom calls and all of these platforms. So that was a big part of my role as a teacher educator, to get the teachers online on these platforms and facilitate that teacher-student interaction. Along the way, I also earned another degree, which I'm more proud of, which I'm really, I was really excited about that degree. It was a master's in political science, and so eventually, when I decided to come here and do my PhD, I wanted to have a topic which, of course, we'll talk about it subsequently, but it had to be something that was bridging both my areas, my master's in business and also my political science. So I was very lucky to have such a topic, as we'll talk ahead. So that's my journey so far. It has been, like you said, in buckets, bits and pieces. We're trying to put all of these things together, little experiences of work and volunteering. Like you said, with you, WarmCom Matters was a big part of my journey. I still talk about it here at the university, and I sit in interviews and I talk about how volunteering was such a big part of my writing. Was something that I've always been very, very passionate about. So yeah, that's my journey so far, and yeah.
That's amazing. I think a lot of us can relate to this, right? Especially in the early years when we choose a field of study, it is usually because someone in the family has said, oh, this seems to be a better option. You'll find more job opportunities. At least that was the case for me. So I did engineering and then did a master's in social work. So I can very much relate to it. So similarly, you did MBA, marketing and finance, and then a master's in political science.
For a long period of time, we're typically very confused. As a generation, I don't know if it is a generation thing.
I think
the younger guys aren't so confused. I meet a lot of younger people in their early 20s. They're very sure where they're going. But I don't know if it is a generation thing. So.
True. So for those of us who have joined us today, if you're also someone like us who didn't find that clarity very early in life, but wanting to find time and wanting to work towards your passion well into your 30s, this video is definitely for you. Both of us are in our about mid-30s, I would say, and we're doing our PhDs now. Sometimes we're surrounded by people like in early 20s, but also sometimes surrounded by people in their late 50s.
Even older people, yes.
Exactly. And I think any time is right to do a PhD if you really want to do a PhD. So back to you, Danish. so you were teaching and you always liked academia, but
Yes.
what was that moment when you decided, now I need to do a PhD?
So I think it was always on the horizon for me personally. I did enjoy academia, or I did enjoy being with the young people, the kind of energy that you get from young people, interacting with them. There's a lot of positivity around that profession. But I knew for a fact that at some point I have to step on the accelerator and go higher up in this area. So after 5 years of my job at the Department of Education in J&K, I decided that now was the time to move ahead, step on the gas, and get a PhD. At that point of time, I think I had reached that point in my academic career where I was able to see things more clearly, less confused. There was better clarity. I was more sure of where I wanted to head in terms of academia as an academician. So that is when, I think it was around 4 to 5 years, when I decided that I needed to move ahead and do a PhD. I have been always passionate about research, writing also. So I think a PhD, as I saw it then, it combines all of these skills. It combines all of these things. So yeah, it was around 5 years into academia when I decided that now was the time to go ahead with it. Yeah.
Amazing. So once you decided that this is what you want to do, what did you do next? How did you come up with your, a flowchart of sorts as to what to do next?
So for me, I was very lucky in a way because my sister was already doing her PhD. So I knew what to expect. I knew she had experience sending out applications and pitching her ideas to professors in the UK, in Ireland. She ended up in Ireland later. So that was personally something, very important for me. It was a bit of good luck for me personally. But I think quite a few resources online. There's a website called Find a PhD. I went through the whole website. Lots of projects listed. What Find a PhD does is that it gives you predetermined topics which you're expected to write research proposals for. And I wrote around 15 to 20 research proposals. Many of them were not at par. I mean, they were not good enough probably. But what it does is that it gives you, while you're going through these topics, it gives you a sense of what is important, what is current in the research world in your area. I mean, there are different areas, humanities, engineering. I'm sure your project falls under the engineering field. But in humanities, in political science, in business, in my area of studies, I knew I got this sense after, browsing through those topics over and over again. I got the sense what is really current, what is important, where are the research gaps, what are academicians looking at this point of time. So while none of my, pitches went through, it helped me eventually to come up with my own research proposal in a topic that I wanted to do myself. And that's where when I started pitching it to professionals. So I finally decided on a topic in migration studies. I started looking for professors who are doing the work who are doing a similar research in this area, in the UK especially. And that's where I started from. I started pitching the research proposal to them very informally in the beginning, to their email addresses. Sharing my ideas, telling them, look, this is what is important, this is what is being reported in the British press, but there's very little academic research in this area. So maybe I can just, chip in and do something about this. So that's how I actually went about it. It was, it's a cliche, but it is what it is. It's a funnel approach. You go from the larger scenario, you go look at the bigger picture, and then you narrow down on your options. So that is exactly what I followed. Resources like Find a PhD were very helpful. Then, of course, you have to do some typical salesman job, cold calling in terms of sending the emails through, lots of them. But eventually you are able to, if you have the potential in terms of writing a good research proposal, which feels that, through which you are able to make the potential supervisor feel that this person is going to deliver. There is substance in this research, and there are genuine gaps in this area. I think by the end of it, you should be successful in getting it.
Yeah. Although this is really great help. Thank you for sharing. So what I understand is places, I mean the platforms like Find a PhD,
yep.
They really help you in even identifying the subject in which you wanted to do the PhD.
Yes.
That's really great. So you did share that you did write about 15 research proposals on Find a PhD, but then you also ended up sending these emails to professors elsewhere.
Yes.
So what was that approach like? Did you already decide that you were only interested in doing PhD in the UK, or were other locations also open? And once you decided on a location, how did you approach finding out these professors? Was it only on LinkedIn, or what other tools did you use? And eventually, how many emails did you send to professors?
I think, I don't know, I don't have a number, but it wouldn't be less than 50 or 60.
Amazing.
Probably more, not less.
Yeah.
But in terms of the location, yes, it was the UK, preferably, because I think it's because we have our education, much of our education happens in English in India, and it is easier to have a conversation. It is easier to navigate the larger society.
Sure.
When you're in a country like Germany, you might speak in English, you might be comfortable within the university, but it'll be a little difficult to navigate the larger society because of the language barrier. And at this point of time, I didn't want to learn another language. That was that would have been too much for me. So it was preferably the UK, but I did also look at options in the US and Australia, but I had a slight bias in favor of the UK because I also wanted to be surrounded by good architecture, historical monuments, a lot of places where, a lot of towns where these famous authors actually grew up, wrote. We have Haworth close by, the village of the Bronte sisters. So I think it was that cultural affinity. It was also this, ability to speak this particular language, and it does eventually help you to navigate the larger society. You're able to communicate better. So that was the whole idea. And then after I decided the location, UK, I did start. And once I was sure about this particular project in migration, as I'll talk about the project in detail ahead, but I decided that migration was going to be my topic. And then it was important for me to find out who are the experts in this area across universities in the UK.
Right.
So there were quite a few people. In fact, UK now has quite a few universities in the UK have their own dedicated migration centers. Leeds doesn't have it at this point, but it is in the pipeline, maybe in the future sometime. But Oxford, Cambridge, all of these top universities do have dedicated migration centers. So obviously I sent mails to them also, professors working in the area of migration. There's also one other university, Middlesex University, I did receive an offer from them, but eventually it was Leeds that materialized. It was Professor Ida Hyro. He's one of the leading experts in the field of migration globally, not just in the UK. So she responded, and we got on an online meeting, and things took on from there.
Amazing. So, firstly, congratulations for all the effort that you put in. I had no idea that you sent in so many emails and wrote in so many proposals. I think that's fantastic, and I think for anybody who's interested in pursuing a PhD, I think this is what that dedication looks like. So that's a job really well done. But just taking you a step back, so you did say that you wrote about these 50-60 emails, but I'm more interested in how did you identify these people? What was the process of identifying those people and universities? So
I think it is available in most of their work is available out there in the open domain, in the public domain. It is available on their websites. So I think a normal Google search will take you actually to the top professionals in these areas. So once once you've decided your topic of study, your topic of interest, you could actually narrow down, you could actually find out who is the top leading researcher in this area. And so that was the whole thing. I don't think that's really a huge challenge. What really is important, what really is the challenging part really is to understand, to figure out what area you want to work in. And my suggestion would be to, what really worked for me, I think, was to figure out which area is current. I mean, what is the current problem?
Right.
I mean, if a university is willing to spend a certain amount of money on your scholarship, they would want to get some tangible,
Right.
returns from it. And it also makes sense. I mean, we are, as researchers, we are trying to solve real life problems, real world problems. And so I think that phase was very important. And after that, going to the public domain, going to Google, going to their university websites, that process was much simpler after I was able to figure out where I wanted to position my research.
Brilliant. So just to summarize, for those who are starting on this journey and are trying to send out their first emails and proposals, the most easiest ways are, like Danish said, do a first Google search, find out who the current leaders are, look at Google Scholar, look at videos of some talks,
Yes.
conferences, recent conferences, and you just then start finding more references from each place. And that is why finalizing a location helps, so that you're only looking in this vicinity of sorts. Great. So now let's speak about your PhD topic. Please tell us more
Yes.
about your lovely PhD topic.
So it's a lovely topic because I'm actually working in this area which talks about, which tries to research about the human rights of migrant laborers working in UK's agriculture sector. Where the big research gap lies is, when we talk about human rights of workers in the global supply chain, in the global business supply chain, what we really, the prejudice is that probably there are people working somewhere in the eastern parts of the world, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, even India to some extent, which do not have very strong institutions, which do not have very strong laws against human rights for workers, and there's a lot of corruption. This is the whole idea, right? So, I mean, there was this disaster called the Rana Plaza incident. A whole building collapsed and a lot of workers died. So this is the typical example of human rights violations of workers in the global supply chain. And our idea is that this happens only in the developing world. But what we are often surprised to know is this also takes place in countries like the UK,
Right.
where people are coming in from the developing world, from Central Asia, from South Asia, our country included. They come in, work on UK's farms. They get a 6-month visa, seasonal worker visa. They work here on UK's farms for 6 months, and then go back, take back, whatever they've earned. It's a good idea. It seems like a good idea from the outside because you are earning in pounds. The foreign exchange value is pretty high.
Yeah.
It is great for their families. It is great for our country. Also, remittances, are really significant. But those 6 months here in the UK, they often face a lot of exploitation, human rights violations, bordering on what we know today as the modern slavery. So that is my area of research. Modern slavery is basically an idea where a worker is controlled, where a worker is restricted from communicating with the outside because there's no selling and buying of human beings happening, but there's control. A lot of times their passports are taken away. They cannot change their employers. So what you're doing is actually you're making them work, but you're controlling a big part of their lives. And that is what modern slavery is all about.
Seems like colonial legacy continues in the empire here.
In the empire, now here in the developed world context where you do not expect these things to happen. So while it is great, why this research is important is not because there's no hope. There is a lot of hope to improve. It is great for the countries that are receiving, for the host countries. So let's say the UK, it is good because they're getting laborers from the developing world. They're able to fill in those positions, which a lot of people here in the UK are not willing to do because of the high socio-economic indicators here. It is good for the sending countries like India because they get a lot of remittances. It is also good for the workers because they are able to earn in a foreign currency in in pounds, or in Europe, if they're working in Europe, they get to earn in euros. It is known as it is famously known as the triple win. So there is hope. I mean, it's a good idea, but if we are able to improve, if we are able to improve on some aspects, like keep a check on exploitation, keep an eye on whether modern slavery is happening, I think it is great for everybody. There is a lot of scope for improvement. There's hope, and that's my whole motivation behind this. I mean, if we can improve this, if we can look at areas where there are highest risks, if we can do proper risk assessment. A lot of these people come in after spending a lot of money. They sell land, they sell their assets, give it to the brokers who make them, because a lot of them are not very well educated. They often are, they sell family assets to just,
be able to come here.
Be able to come here. And eventually they're not able to take anything back because they are heavily indebted. So these are the risk areas. If we can actually improve on these risk areas, do some risk mitigation, I think this is a good program. It will actually be, in a genuine way, become a triple win for everybody.
Right.
For the sending countries, for the host countries, and also for the migrants.
Right.
So that is my main motivation.
Great. You're clearly very passionate about it. I can see that. So well done, and all the very best to you on your PhD journey. But going back to some of the questions on the PhD process itself. So you did mention that once you established a initial conversation with the supervisor here, what can you please give us some more details as to what happened next and some idea of a timeline?
Yes. So I joined in in the autumn session last year, 2024. My PhD officially started in October, 1st of October. But I actively started looking for projects in December 2023.
Right.
So, and I think by February 2024, I had an offer from. I didn't have an offer. I did have my first conversation with the professor, Professor Ida, and we had 2 meetings online. First one was rather informal. I just wanted to give her a sense of what my ideas are and how I could contribute to this area. But it was actually the second meeting, which was more formal, where an additional supervisor joined in, and that is when the whole process took a more formal shape, and we decided about what the whole project must look like. They asked questions about my background, and I was able to persuade them in terms of being able to deliver the goods really in this area, and make them understand I do have a fair understanding of human rights. I do also have an understanding of how supply chains work, global supply chains work, because the context that I'm going to operate in, or I operate in currently, is international business. So I had an academic background in both business as well as political science. So that was the whole process in the second meeting. And after that, I think it was around 2 weeks, March, I got a formal
interview of sorts.
An offer, finally an offer from the University of Leeds. And so it was, so if somebody's planning to start in October, they have to positively start in January, even earlier probably.
Yeah.
So January, you start sending out the mails, try and convince your professor. So by spring you have an offer, and then you go ahead and do your visa process. And by July end I had my visa.
Right.
And you get a window of 3 months. After you get your visa, you get a window of 3 months, and I think my window allowed me to come in by the end of September. I was in the UK. So that is the rough timeline, but I'm always happy to share more specifics. If anybody would like to ask, they can always comment under your video. Yeah.
Great. No, this is really helpful. I think it was a similar journey even for mine. I also started applying sometime I started sending out emails in December. Jan is when I took it much more seriously, but by mid-Feb, I did get my offer, and I started October 1st as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is usually, I think, the timeline across UK.
I would say 6 to 8 months is
I think 6 is still too tight.
Yeah. Yes, 8 months I would be more comfortable.
Definitely.
But of course, there's also obviously a lot of process that happens even before that. I mean, like I said, you have to figure out what area. But yes, in terms of starting actively and then coming over to the UK, you have to give yourself that buffer period of 8 months, 6 to 8 months, I would say.
Yeah. No, this is really great. So yeah, if you're contemplating and figuring out where to start, when to start, so give yourself at least a year, comfortably at least a year. But if you've made a decision and you're in a hurry, then I think even 10 months should do, but you'll have to put in so much more effort, because imagine if you have to send 50 emails, and not all email is a simple copy paste, right? You have to customize each of it as well. Great. So can you also tell us a bit more about your scholarship details? It's a fully funded scholarship. So
I was very categorical. When I spoke to my professor, I said, we are coming from India and it's not possible to support ourselves financially in the UK with the kind of foreign exchange that we have and the kind of inflation that we have here in this country. The cost of living is pretty high. So yeah, she understood right at the outset that this is that I need the scholarship. I need a fully funded research, and this is also something that I would want to share with everybody who's aspiring to do a PhD here. Just be categorical about it. That funding is very important for us. I mean, we are living here for around 3 to 4 years at least. So for you to support yourself during that period, it is important that the university funds you. Although you also have, once you arrive here on a student visa, you also have 20 hours of work permit per week. 20 hours per week you can work. That can be a little challenging. Working alongside your PhD is a little challenging, so it is always very helpful to come on a scholarship for anybody coming in from India. So yeah, I was very categorical about it, and luckily she was supportive. She spoke to the right people in the department. I have a Loops scholarship, Leeds University Business School scholarship. A lot of other scholarships are also available. There's White Rose scholarship. So quite a few of others. I didn't look for them. I was directly in, I got in with a Leeds University Business School scholarship. So yeah, that was the whole idea. It went along. There was no separate process for it.
Right.
Although if you're applying for White Rose or other scholarships externally, there is a separate process where you have to pitch your proposal to them also separately. But for this, luckily, it was just a single streamlined process where I had the offer, and also the offer to do a PhD, and also the scholarship offer from the business school.
Great. So what does your scholarship cover? So is there any tuition involved? Is there a stipend? Is there additional fieldwork costs? Is there any conference costs?
So for me, it is I have a full fee waiver. My tuition fee of £23,000 per year are covered under the scholarship, and I also have a maintenance stipend of around £19,000 a year, which comes as a monthly, as a sort of a monthly stipend to maintain yourself in the UK. And for my research, I have an additional £3,000, which it's a corpus that is used, along the whole 3 or 4 years, whatever you're spending here. You obviously have to be doing something very related to your research, going to the conferences, collecting data, and that corpus of 3,000 is separate, placed for your research related work itself. So yeah, those are the three components: a full academic fee waiver, a maintenance stipend of more than 19,000 per year, and a corpus of £3,000 for the research, a research grant, a research fund for research related work.
Great. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing these details, because I think this really helps, right? Especially for those of us, again, in mid-30s, we're already earning, we may have dependents, and we cannot lose out on income. And not a lot of scholarships, again, offer a generous stipend. I would say this is not even completely generous, but it is enough. It is more than enough, I think, for one person.
You can go to McDonald's once a week.
True. You definitely can't do backpacking trip around Europe. No way. Because visa also has, we have visa issues.
Yes.
But yeah, so it is a decent stipend. You can definitely survive. It is more than enough for one person. But I think some scholarships also offer extra bursary if you have dependents, like children as well. So it really depends on which scholarship you're applying, and you can look into those details as well. All right. So the last few questions, once you got the news, all is well, now you have to fly and make this big move from Kashmir to Yorkshire.
Yeah.
So what was that process like at home? How was that received? And also financially, because our scholarships do not cover our visa costs, they don't cover our flying costs. So how did you plan for all of those costs as well?
So one big hurdle, of course, is that 28-day visa, the 28-day bank balance that you have to demonstrate, that you have to basically show to the visa office, the home office, and that is something where you need your family to chip in, where you need people to, sort of pool money into your bank account to be able to show that, the details would be, of course, available on the website. But for a period of 28 days, I think there's some amount of money that you need to show, demonstrate your financial ability to stay in the UK.
Yeah. Can you tell how much money did you have to show?
I think it was around 9.5 lakh.
Yeah, similar.
Yes.
I counted for about I think 10 or 15 because I was coming with Prashant and it was for both of us.
Yeah, it was 9.5
lakh. But the same thing, call all your relatives, close friends, just pooling in just for that 1 month, and I'll give it back to you.
I hope the Home Office isn't listening to us though. But so I think that is a big major hurdle for me. That was that is mostly for everybody trying to move into the UK. In terms of how my family received, they were quite welcoming. Luckily, they were happy about it, and they realized that this is the next step in my career, and they were quite supportive that way. And they were even proud when a couple of newspapers also featured me.
Amazing.
So that's it was a good moment. They realized that I'm hitting the peak of my career. Academically, not professionally. I hope I'm only able to take it ahead from here. But so luckily they were quite supportive, and they did understand that this is something that I'm passionate about, and it would be, it would only make sense to just let me just take it ahead, take the flight. But apart from that, it has been so far so good. It has been very positive. It has, in terms of the journey, I've enjoyed it. I have a sense of familiarity with this. It's my first time in the UK though, but I think anybody coming in will very quickly realize that this is it has a good vibe to it. You gel in pretty quickly with the people. There are lots of events. There are lots of places you can meet people. There's a huge Indian diaspora.
Yes.
In Leeds, around the city, and even in the rest of the country. So that is something that makes you feel at home in a way. You are able to speak in your own language a lot of times. You have a lot of Indian restaurants that you can go to. But
British Indian restaurants.
Yes, British Indian restaurants, not very authentic, but
authentic locally.
Yes, locally.
For Yorkshire, they're authentic.
Yes. So overall, I think it has been a pretty enjoyable experience, touch wood. But let's see how it's been good so far. These are still early days, but my seniors tell me the burnout is going to happen sometime down the line. So
true. I also wanted to touch the costs of IHS, the immigration health surcharge related to NHS. So how was that for you? So just to also share this to our listeners, if you're planning to do a PhD or master's in the UK, you, along with your visa costs of about 50,000, I think.
55,000.
You also have to pay something called IHS, Immigration Health Surcharge, which is linked to your NHS. So UK has there's only one health service here. It's a public service, so you have to pay for it. And without paying, you cannot even book your slot for visa. And the way it calculates is for each year. So if it's for masters, it may calculate for a year, but if it's for PhD, it will calculate for 3 to 4 years, depending on your on your letter, your offer letter. So how was those costs for you?
So for me, because my visa was for 4 years, I think it was 900 multiplied by 4, 900 pounds. So the entire amount went up to, I think, 4.5 lakh.
My God.
Plus the visa fee of 50,000, 55,000. So you can
so just 5 lakh rupees is your
visa and IHS. And again, this depends on the currency exchange.
Correct.
Back then, that's what it was. I mean, this is just a few months
away,
but if you're planning down the line, it will also depend on the kind
it may increase.
Yes, it may.
Because in 2022, when I came in, for both me and Prashant, it took us 5 lakh rupees just for health IHS. But for you, already just for one person, it is costing you that much.
Yes, exactly. And then, of course, the tickets, I think around, let's say,
another lakh.
No, not another.
60,000 maybe.
Lesser, even lesser. I don't know. I have a good travel agent back home in
Srinagar.
Good. I'm not allowed to, you know. So so I think it was around 5.5 lakh to come over. That was the traveling.
All over, everything.
Entire thing. The IHS, the tickets, and the
got a visa.
The visa.
Perfect. Also, I think, speaking about costs, along with that, did you also then have to pay some deposits here for your rent? How did that work?
There was a £200 deposit that I had to pay. I was staying at I'm staying at a location very close to the university. So for that, I had to book very early.
Right.
So if you're coming to Leeds, it is very difficult to find an accommodation towards the end of the year. I mean, very close to when you're arriving here. It is better to be able to book a room or an apartment very early, as soon as you confirm coming here. So for me at that point of time, it was a £200 deposit that I had to pay.
And this was with the university, right?
With the university manages the accommodation.
Perfect.
And there's this organization called Unipol that manages the accommodations on behalf of the university. So it was through the university that I had to pay. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Danish. This was really helpful. So just to briefly summarize, if you're planning to do a PhD, one, give yourself at least 12 months of time so that it will allow you, one, to save up all these finances, the pre-costs. Two, it will also help you find that topic, funnel in and find that research proposal, find your supervisors and the universities, narrow down your location, and just keep at it until you get a response, I think. And I think it will definitely be worth it. All the effort is definitely worth it, as we can see from Danish's excitement as well. Yes, and if you have any other questions, please do comment and we'll try to get back. And do you have any last words of wisdom?
Last words of wisdom. I think for me it has been the greatest wisdom that I can offer really is, I mean, a lot of people do this half-heartedly. That's always a bad idea. For me, it is always the passion. I mean, if you're passionate about a certain topic, only then go after it, because your passion acts as a sort of an engine, in an aircraft. An aircraft needs a very strong engine, and that's what drives you through this very difficult journey. I mean, what you're doing in a PhD essentially is reading a lot of research papers, bulk of research papers. You cannot get through that unless you have that passion about your topic. So only if you're passionate about it, I would recommend that go ahead for a PhD. Do not do it for the just the heck of it. Just for the sake of it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, and don't miss out checking on the other 2 episodes that we've already posted. And see you next week. Bye.